And you're live, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on the 12th of June 2025. My name is Councillor John Driver and I'm the chair of this committee. Members are reminded we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today. However, we may have periodic fire alarms, and I remind members to ensure they sign in and out when entering the council offices. If you hear the fire alarm, please exit using either of the two marked fire escape routes. Once out of the building, please proceed to the designated muster point on the grass verge by the police station entrance. Okay, on to agenda item 2, then apologies for absences. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies were received from Councillor Lagan and Councillor Lay, and Councillor Stamp is attending as a substitute for Councillor Lagan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. On to agenda item 3, then minutes. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 13th of March, found on pages 5 to 28, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Siddall, can we vote, please, those in favour? Or can we agree by assent? Let's see if we can agree by assent. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Agenda item 5, then public participation. I can advise that we have not received any submissions from members of the public. So we move on to agenda item 6. And I'll just move to that. So agenda item 6, which can be found on pages 29 to 30, and the purpose of this report is to appoint working groups of the Strategy and Resources Committee for the ensuing municipal year. There are groups both for outside bodies, so the two outside bodies, the Maldon Citizens Advice Bureau Liaison, and secondly, the Maldon Museum in the Park Liaison Committee. So if we take that first, and the recommendation associated with that is that the committee appoints representative to the outside bodies as listed in section 3.1.1 below for the ensuing municipal year. So in 3.1.1 you can see the representatives from 24-25, and we need to appoint 3 members. So we did have Councillor Fittock, Councillor Nick Spenceley and Councillor Thompson. So obviously Councillor Nick Spenceley is not here and Councillor Paula Spenceley is instead. However, we need 3 members, so Can I ask for names firstly?
Well, exchange is no robbery, Chairman.
Yes.
I propose Councillor Paula Spenceley take on the duties of her husband. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, are you okay? And Councillor Fittick and Councillor Thompson, are you happy to continue with that role? Yep. Okay. So can we agree on that by assent? Thank you very much. Secondly, the Maldon Museum in the Park Liaison Committee. So there are two names here, Councillor Lagan and Councillor Lay. They are not here. I'm aware that Councillor Lay and I believe Councillor Lagan, both of them would like to be on that committee. Thank you very much. We all seem to be agreed on that, so good. Especially as they're not here, so nothing like giving work to somebody who's not here, but I think they'd be happy with that. Okay, we move on to actually the second recommendation. The committee appoints representative to the working group as listed in section 3.2.2 below for the ensuing municipal year. So we have the car park task and finish working group, and this has now been renamed as the car park fees annual review group. The task and finish element of that has been completed. So this is really a group that will review the fees later on the year. So it won't be meeting until it's reviewing the fees. So we'll start with that. At the moment, that working group has Councillor Driver, Councillor Durham, Councillor Lay and Councillor Stamp. Councillor Stamp is not a member of SNR, so actually can't stand on for that particular committee. Councillor Burrell-Cook. Sorry, Councillor Stamp, you did have your name, and then Councillor Burrell-Cook.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to nominate. If I haven't asked him though, so he might refuse, but I've got a second one.
Yes.
Because I think Councillor Fittock. If not, then Councillor Stilts. Councillor Fittock. Would you do that? Do I have a second? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Burrell-Cook.
It's interesting to me that the ward members of where there are car parks charging are not automatically included because the fees that are charged affect those ward members straight away. So I would actually put a recommendation through to say that those ward members of now or future car parks be automatically included in the working group.
Well, where we are at the moment is that actually it's been agreed there will be 4 members of this committee. So we would end up changing rules if we were to do
then
that.
I will recommend myself to go on to the.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Councillor? Yeah. Thank you. So, Councillor Durham.
Well, I was going to propose Councillor Burrell-Cook as well, but as the outgoing chairman, I would rather like to stay on that if that's in agreement with the rest of this committee.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so Councillor Siddle.
I understand Councillor Burrell-Cook's position. However, we are talking about district assets, and the crucial thing in terms of those district assets is it affects everybody. It affects visitors who come to the district. So I fully appreciate your point of view. However, we have to take it from a point of view that these are district assets and not Maldon town assets.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Councillor Durham, we have Councillor Fittock, Councillor Burrell-Cook, and I would like to remain on that committee as well. And you're on it anyway. Thank you very much. So so that gives us then the 4, so Councillor Driver, myself, Councillor Durham, Councillor Fittock and Councillor Burrell-Cook. Are we agreed? Sorry, are we? Councillor Stamp, you look.
I didn't know that Councillor Burrell-Cook was going on it. I thought Andrew Lowe might be going.
Well, Councillor Burrell-Cook has put his name forward, seconded by, I think, Councillor Siddle. by Councillor Stilt, and also Councillor Durham had also suggested his name. So, okay. Okay. Yeah, oh yes, sorry, I'm asked to, can I remind you please, if you're speaking, to use your microphone, and then when you finish speaking, turn your microphone off. Okay, so we have the 4 members as far as that car park review group is concerned. The second one is the Hive Key Desilting Task and Finish Working Group. I know that Councillor Lagan, although not here, wishes to be on that group and has mentioned that to me, and I said I would, put his name forward, and so thank you, Councillor Stilt, second. So that's one name. We need 6 members. Councillor Stilts.
Can I propose myself?
You can, and seconded by Councillor Siddle. That's 2. We need 4 more. Councillor Burrell-Cook.
Can I propose myself as well?
And I'll second that.
Okay. We need 3 more. Councillor Spenceley.
Can I propose myself?
And I will second you. Councillor Spenceley, that's 4. Councillor Thompson.
Can I propose myself?
You can.
Thank you.
And seconded by Councillor Siddle. And 1 more. Councillor Lay, I think that's yes. So Councillor Lay, I will second Councillor Lay as well. So I think that gives us our 6. Did you get that, Miss Bird? Those 6?
Chair, I'm just missing the first one. I've got Councillor Stilts, Councillor Burrell-Cook, Councillor Spenceley, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Lay.
And Councillor Driver.
Right.
No,
Oh, Councillor Lagan rather, not
Lagan.
Driver.
Thank you so much. Yeah, got that.
I am, yeah, indeed. Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of you, Chair. However, we are moving on to the waste contract member working group.
We are. You're jumping the gun.
I am jumping the gun. I'm getting there
Yes.
quick. So one of the things I would put forward as a recommendation that we have 6 members on that working group, because when we've had 4, it's caused huge issues in the past.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, can we agree that by consent then to have 6 on that working group? Agreed? Okay. So we have, at the moment, Councillor Durham and Councillor Siddle. Councillor Fluker's not on the strategy resources. Councillor Lagan is not here, but I suspect would be interested. Councillor Stilts.
Yeah, I was on it as a member of the council, so I'd like to stay on it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll second Councillor Stilts and I'll nominate myself.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Yes. Oh, now I've lost track of just exactly how many people we've got on this. So we've got Councillor Durham, Councillor Siddle, Councillor Stilts, Councillor Lagan.
That's it.
That's 4. And the suggestion is we have 2 more. So from the chair, I will propose myself, which. Okay. And
Spenceley.
I was going to nominate Councillor Thompson.
And I'll nominate Councillor.
Well, I did nominate first. Did I? Are we still playing by the rules at this committee?
we
or
are playing
just
by the
having a-
rules. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Councillor Spence. Oh, sorry, I'll second Councillor Spenceley.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, we got the 6. Yeah. Can we just run through the 6 again then? So Councillor Durham, Councillor Lagan, Councillor Siddle,
Myself.
Councillor Stilts,
Yourself.
Councillor Driver, and Councillor Spenceley. Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay. Thank you. On to then agenda item. Oh, I should have said, can we agree by assent for all of that, actually? Agreed? Thank you very much. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, Chairman, would I be able to request that agenda item 7 and 9 are swapped around, please?
I have looked at that and I heard that might be a consideration. However, when I looked at the agenda item 7, the car parking strategy, it does seem like a general strategy as opposed to something specific to Burnham. So I don't think it, to be honest with you, I'm not sure it makes a difference which way round we treat these, because actually what we're being asked to consider is a general car parking strategy as opposed to something specific to an individual car park. But
Okay, can I actually ask which rule you're actually using the Constitution on that then? Because mine was a genuine request. So if you're going to refuse it, I'd like to know on what, you know, it's not just...
well, okay, if you're asking, can they be, do we have a second if that's the case for that change?
I'll second it.
Okay, so in that case then, if it's being seconded, what we're asking is to swap round agenda item 7 and agenda item 9. Can we have a vote? Those in favour of swapping those two round? Well, listen, we've got a proposal, then we need to vote and we'll see what people think. Okay, all right, then in that case, then we'll take agenda item 9 next. Yes. All right, okay, well, let's go back. Let's just make sure we're right. So those in favour of swapping agenda item 9 and 7 around, those in favour? 5, 6, okay, and those against? Okay, there we go. So we're swapping, thank you very much. So we are swapping agenda 7 and 9 round. So we will go to agenda item 9. So, which can be found on pages 73 to 78. So, Ms. Holmes, I think you're speaking to this particular item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The report before you tonight is in relation to Foundry Lane car park at Burnham-on-Crouch. The council was contacted by the Town Council with a request for us to consider the transfer of the Foundry Lane car park to the Burnham-on-Crouch Town Council for consideration of £1. The car park is in the centre of Burnham, and there's a plan attached to the agenda for those of you that may not know its location. As part of their request, the Town Council has committed to keep the car park free of charges in line with their current car park that they also manage at Providence Road. In order to protect the car park and to prevent any future use of it, the proposal before you is that a restriction is placed on the land to ensure that it can only be used for car parking in the future, so that no commercial development could take place, therefore protecting that going into the future. The reason behind the request, which is set out in the report, is the Town Council have been in discussions with the doctor's surgery in relation to them doing works on that surgery to improve the health provision, and the car park may play a role in those discussions, and they felt that it would benefit them to have that ownership and that they can manage it along with their other car park. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but hopefully it's a fairly self-explanatory report for you to consider. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Spenceley.
So to be clear, if the doctor's surgery were to want to expand onto the car park under the restriction that we've got here, would they still be able to do that?
No, from what I understand, where they're considering expanding it is that they will need some additional car parking spaces, and what the Town Council may do is lease a small number of those specifically for the doctors, for them to be able to use them. There is a small strip of land between the car park and the surgery that isn't owned by us, so they won't be able to extend onto our land unless they can find that owner and purchase it. But at the moment, practically, they wouldn't be able to extend the building into our car park.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm a bit concerned about this, to be quite honest. I mean, we are obliged to go for best value, and I don't think selling it for £1 represents best value for this authority when it's on our asset register at nearly £80,000. I mean, even if you take account of the 50 pence we paid for it in 1980, well, if you extend that 50 pence in 1982, it's certainly much more than £1. And I think on the basis that we have previously discussed possibility of charging for car parks in Burnham, that negates the argument that it is a liability as such. And I honestly don't think that we should be unloading our assets in such a manner without some sort of reasonable amount of money changing hands, to be quite honest, and I don't regard £1 as being reasonable. Thank you.
Councillor, Councillor Barrell-Cook and then Councillor Stamp.
I too have reservations over this in terms of, as the leader said earlier, that car parks are strategically the assets of MDC and across the whole of MDC. So there are lots of other car parks that are non-chargeable, that are linked to community assets in some way. And why should Burnham-on-Crouch be taken as in isolation outside of all of these other assets to be looked at? But also, what is there to protect Maldon District Council from the future of charging? So if it is transferred and then charging was to come in for Providence or for Foundry Lane from Burnham Town Council, we would be losing revenue from that stream. So there needs to be some consideration that if charges were added at a later date, that would have to be looked at in terms, because it would be no longer a free car park.
Councillor, do you want to come in at this point, Councillor Stamp? Okay. Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I understand what Councillor Barrell-Cook is saying, but you really have to take each asset as an individual item and not look at a global policy to say, if we do it here, we've got to do it in another place. That's just not an appropriate way of deciding things. I mean, we have to understand the principle of community asset transfer has been around for a very long time. And it was actually promoted, I think it was under the Local Act 2011, whereby it encouraged local authorities to transfer assets that were seen to be of significant community value. So, notwithstanding that we can make money from things, we can make money from lots of things in lots of different ways. The point of the matter is, it is a valuable asset to the community. And the reason that the Town Council want to have that asset is to protect it in perpetuity, so that things that they don't want to happen to it. So I don't think it's unreasonable. I mean, we talk about value. What real value is it? It's only going to be of value to someone that can potentially turn into a car park and make money from it. And that's the whole point of the proposal that's come forward, to protect it, to make sure that it's there for the use of residents without extortionate charges or becoming some kind of private car park or something else. So I would fully support the recommendation. Chair.
Did you want to come back?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. In relation to Mr Barrell-Cook about the future car parking charges, there isn't a restriction that we could place if we transferred it that would allow us to recoup money if the Town Council decided to charge in the future. I just wanted to make that point.
We've got other people firstly, so I think Councillor Siddle and then... Oh, I think actually it's Councillor Durham and then Councillor Siddle. Councillor Durham. Yeah,
I think there's another element to this that we need to be aware of, Chairman, because in a couple of years' time, this car park will not be the property of Maldon District Council, it will be the property of the unitary, whatever shape that is. So we are looking now at disposing of an asset that may be treated differently to what the unitary will want to do. And I think it would be very wrong for us to prejudge that and to get rid of it now. It will be up to the unitary authority in 2 years' time to decide what it does with the assets that are transferred to it. So I just think that we should not be jumping right now. Thank you.
Councillor Siddle.
One of our corporate strategies is to ensure that our local economies thrive and that we do our best in terms of investing in our community and looking at our community. This is a community asset, and therefore I don't see any reason why this should not be transferred to the ownership of Burnham Town Council. We've done it before, yeah, we have that precedent. And if we really want to be shown as a district council that meets the needs of the whole district, then I believe that we should transfer this asset to Burnham Town Council. And LGR at this stage is not relevant.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, given that the maintenance responsibility goes with the car park, then my feeling is that we should agree these recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Borcourt, I'll let you come back unless Councillor Stamp you want to. Okay, and then.
I just wanted to ask for some clarity, because obviously in 2.2 that a restriction is placed on land to ensure that any future use is only for car parking to ensure no commercial development on the land can take place. Why couldn't that include free car parking? A restriction is placed on the land to ensure that any future use is only for free car parking.
We would have an overage if it was potentially going to be sold for housing, for example. It would be an overage clause.
This one.
We could place an overage clause in the agreement that said if it was sold, but the restriction would prevent it from being sold. So from my point of view, you wouldn't need the overage clause. If the town council at some future date decided they wanted to do something commercial with it, they would have to negotiate with whichever being is in place to remove that restriction, and in the commercial world there is a price for that which takes into account the uplift in value. So we would recover the money by into negotiations if something was on the table. I'm not aware that that's in the future plans, but yeah, in terms of the restrictions, what we can place on them, we are limited in law in terms of how enforceable and how they are, but we could consider including the word free, but I'd want to look into how enforceable that would be, and I wouldn't want to say we could definitely add that, but I know that that one is legally binding and that we could use. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fittock, you did have your. I'm conscious that Councillor Stamp is being very patient, and I'm just looking over just at the point at which you want to say something, but I know you'd quite like to come in at the end. So, Councillor Fittock, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back to you. I mean, I do understand the points that are being made about local government reform and the potential for somebody else to make money from it. But the point of the matter is that we're not charging for that car park now at the moment. It's our asset. It's not a unitary's asset. And as Councillor Thompson pointed out, we're incurring costs. So the fact that somebody might decide, I don't know if you've been to visit the car park, it's a relatively small car park. The majority of it is taken up actually by very short-term stays up to 4 hours, and a lot of the spaces are taken actually up by staff that work at the GP surgery. The amount of income that you get from it would be minor. I can't remember what the sum was in the proposal brought forward. So I really think we're splitting hairs about it. So we just got to look upon the fact that what it is, it's a free car park. It has to be paid for by the district council. Recently, a council resolved not to charge for it because Burnham is not a thriving town. It's struggling if you walk through it. So I just think that we should focus on the fact that it's our asset. We can do what we want with it, and I would, again, fully support the recommendation.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just if I can come in on the LGR point, I think to advise members that no decisions have been made yet on local government reorganisation. We are our own district council. We're responsible for our assets and the management and the decisions on our assets. I think it's right that we constantly have one eye on local government reorganisation and the implications on any reports that come forward. But I would advise members that that no decisions have been made on the future of local government reorganisation yet, and we should make this decision based on Maldon District Council. The white paper does encourage parishes and communities to take responsibility for their local areas. This, for me, seems to align with that sort of principle. So it's just a little reminder on where we are currently. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Spenceley.
I think bearing in mind that this particular car park is used by people visiting patients, visiting the medical centre and people working there, there couldn't possibly be a more appropriate car park for us to give to the people of Burnham. And I think that, leaving LGR aside, I would even say that if we are going to focus on LGR, and it might well be that we have residents who end up getting charged for visiting the doctors, And I, for one, am never going to support that if I can do something to avoid it. So I think that we should gift it to the town council, and I would support that motion. Yeah, for £1. Thank you.
Most people have had an opportunity to speak, but Councillor Stamp, I think you clearly would like to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to give some background maybe for the newer members who don't know the history. I actually started speaking to CLT when Richard Holmes was here with Paul Dodson about when they were going to actually look at closing our medical facility in the centre of town to move it out to the outskirts of town. So there was a massive publicity campaign, meetings was held, and we managed to actually stop our surgery being closed. So now we've worked extremely hard behind the scenes with the NHS and the doctor's surgery to look at expanding this surgery to meet the needs of the growing residents of Burnham. They don't just serve Burnham, they serve Althorn and North Banbridge as well. That is the catchment area. So this town council and CL2 were really very good with me. And then when Doug came in, I spoke to him when Richard Holmes was still here, and we had another meeting. And if you actually read your report, the Section 151 officer who raised the same queries, and they're very valid queries that have been raised tonight, because I myself said I don't think the council will do it because they would say it's not value for money. But you have to look at it in the way it is formed. It is a community asset. Burnham-on-Crouch Town Council lost all their assets in the local government reorganisation in '74. We used to own everything. We used to own the Providence car park. We used to own the clock tower. But obviously it all got taken away in the reorganisation in '74. I think it was '74. Forgive me if it was 70. So this council was very good, and they allowed us to buy Providence car park for £1. We have just spent £75,000 doing that up of Burnham's taxpayers' money. We bought the clock tower from £1, or one of them was 50p, one was £1. And what I'd like to do before I reach my time, I want to show you the plans that we as a council are doing, hopefully with Historic England, to refurbish the clock tower, because it's a heritage building, Grade 2 listed. So we've already repaired the clock tower once, but there is a St Mary's School behind it, and we are going to repair it to a high standard because we live in a historic town as well. It's not just Burnham, Maldon who has historic buildings. We do. We've got quotes in, and we're looking at possibly 150 grand that we're going to try and deliver more visitor attractions, because we are out on a limb. We're not like you guys that are sort of condensed. How long have I got? I can see your face.
Well, I am because we're not here to discuss the clock tower. Much as I understand why you are.
Chairman, I'm evidencing. I'm evidencing Burnham's commitment to keeping their assets up to date.
And I'm not knocking that at all.
Right. So that's why I was giving the history, because some people maybe don't know that. So yeah, I'd actually like to thank the officers who've worked really hard on this. And it is a liability for Burnham as well. We're only a small, medium town council. We're not a massive town council. We've just had to raise our precept, but there you go. But we're more than happy to take it on because originally it was to stop the surgery moving. And I've said this to, I think, some councillors before. If something like this came in Maldon and you wanted to charge round St Peter's, I'd be out there saying, don't charge, or wherever. So if you want to bring no charge in to hospitals or doctors, I'll be your person to help you. Don't worry about that, because I think it should be free for all. But thank you for the people who supported us. And just remember, it is a free car park for a medical facility in the centre of Burnham. Thank you, Chair.
I think it much as there is a pound involved in the transfer, there is a cost which we would continue to have in terms of the maintenance of that car park. So if we kept, there will be a liability that we would continue to have. Anyway, I think we've got to a point now. We've explored this sufficiently, and I think we've got to a point where we need to vote. So the recommendation little one is that the committee agrees for the council to transfer Foundry Lane car park Burnham-on-Crouch to Burnham-on-Crouch Town Council for consideration of £1. And little two, that a restriction is placed on the land to ensure that any future use is only for car parking to ensure that no commercial development of the land can take place. Councillor Stilts?
I propose that we accept those recommendations.
Do I have a seconder? Okay, so can we have a vote? Those in favour of those recommendations? Okay, so we've got one. Okay, and those against and abstentions? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. That is passed, that's carried. Yes, thank you very much. All right, thank you. We move back to then agenda item 7, which can be found on pages 31 to 46. And I believe, Ms Green, you are speaking to this.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. So I'd like to introduce this report. We are obviously aware this evening that decision's been taken to transfer the car park at Burnham, so there will need to be an update to the strategy, because at the moment that does refer to that car park. So I don't think there's anything in the strategy that would need to be fundamentally changed in terms of its aims and objectives, but just from a technical point of view, we will update that with the current position. So to introduce the report, the council had a task and finish working group which considered annual car park charges, and that includes the recommendations which form the basis of the annual fees and charges proposal. Members may remember in September 23 there was a discussion about that working group actually taking on a slightly wider remit and actually doing more work in terms of creating a wider car park strategy for the district. And that happened, and we began the work in March 24. So over the following 12 months, the member and officer working group met a number of times, and they considered 5 key themes, and we held a number of meetings to explore each theme in detail, and it was a data-driven working group which would inform the recommendations. So we have before you Appendix 1, the final version of the car park strategy. As you will see, it has 5 key themes, which is supporting the needs of the district, making best use of our existing assets, improving the customer experience, supporting climate action strategy, and identifying any opportunities for improvement in investment and growth. During the course of developing the strategy, the council also worked towards achieving a British Parking Association Safer Parking Scheme mark and award, which is called a Park Mark, and also an Accessible Parking Scheme accreditation called Park Access. I'm delighted to say that we actually achieved that accreditation, and we're now able to display those particular accreditations. What that means is the car parks have been vetted by the police, and they have had the assurance that we've got measures in place to create a safer environment for car park users. And the car park the car park accreditation means that the facility is accessible and inclusive. So we were delighted to be awarded those marks of our hard work. So in conclusion, we have undertaken significant work as a working group to develop the car park strategy, and that will help inform future decisions about the council's car parks. We have received the Award of Excellence, recognising the provision of a good quality and safe accessible car parking service. But we do recognise that there are further improvements that we could still make. So tonight, members, we are asking you to approve the wider car park strategy Appendix 1, and we will be developing an action plan, and that will come forward to you later in the year. Thank you, members. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So just to read out the recommendation that the car park strategy at Appendix 1 be approved. Questions? Seconded. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah. So Councillor Spenceley and then Councillor Stamp.
So a good piece of work, and I'm glad that this has been put together. However, I don't want to appear churlish, but I have got a couple of comments. And if you look at page 42 and the second bullet point, Review and develop a range of parking charges to incentivise use and balance demand between sites. So we did have an incident around the car parking that I'm sure everyone will remember not so long ago, and I think it was part of this policy. What I will say is what I say very often in the chamber is, please can we be sure when we embark on something like that that we employ communication properly. It's no good doing something to incentivise people to use a different car park if you haven't communicated where they can get the cheaper parking. And that needs to be, all that results in is a lot of very unhappy residents. So I think we have to be really clear about that. And again, I'm going to sound a little tiny bit churlish, I'm sure, but I'm a bit of a pedant when it comes to the English language. So if we were to look at pages, I think it's 36 and 37. So, you know, we've got some mistakes there in the grammar, to be honest. In doing so we will need to work with key partners such as Essex County Council, South Essex Parking Partnership, town and parish councils to not only identify parking solutions which meet demand. And then similarly on page 37, the strategy themes align with the corporate plan and considers other strategies. That's really quite clumsy English. I don't think a strategy is considering anything. It's kind of, and it just needs a little bit of a rework. I just think we need to be mindful that the things that we produce make complete sense and are very transparent in terms of the language. So I think that just needs a tiny bit of tweaking, but I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stamp and then Councillor Burrell-Cook.
Thank you. Page 37, I'm most probably being a bit dense, but can you sort of give me a little bit more detail on what the identifying opportunities mean in investing our district and growing our economy? I just don't understand in what context are we going to do that. Is that the whole strategy because it's going to align? I'm just a little bit unsure on the actual meaning, please.
Ms Green, did you respond? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of how we look at how that aligns with supporting business and investment, that is something we're going to look at as part of our action plan in terms of how we can align that. And a good example could be looking at how we can incentivise people to stay longer in the district, etc. So as part of our annual fees and charges, that will be something that we look at. I mean, a good example for this year was the review of the Prom Park charges, where what we've actually done is to make it cheaper for people to stay for longer, to encourage more people to stay local, to spend more and to visit. One of the other things that we're looking at is how we can again incentivise not just for the town of Maldon, but actually more widely as a district. So a good example of that is, as you'll see later on the agenda, we're proposing a free Wi-Fi at the Promenade Park. Through that, we can do some advertising of local businesses, activities, facilities that again can encourage and promote wider than just the Maldon Town Centre. So that there's ways of looking at the different strategies and trying to join them together to see how we can achieve those better outcomes. So that's just a couple of examples.
Yeah. Can I come back?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I just ask when it will be reported back to this committee though? Because obviously it's going to be monitored. So it would be interesting on how often, have you set yourself a timeline to be able to set those targets and achieve them? And then it could surely come back to be reported here to see if you're actually achieving them? Or will it go to PGA?
Thank you, through you, Chair. The intention is to bring an action plan later in the year back to Strategy and Resources, but that then will be monitored through PGA.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burrell-Cook.
Thank you. Yes, a very good piece of work. I've just got one comment on page 44, on the second column, second bullet point, work with local businesses to reduce their carbon footprint by encouraging use of greener modes of transport and deliveries. I think we also are missing the fact that currently Google and other mapping services are directing customers, visitors up Market Hill because it is the shortest route. So we actually need to amend that to work with local businesses and organisations to help reduce, because it is a fundamental problem that those in travelling from, for example, some of the resorts north of Maldon are directed up Market Hill, which is not helping with the climate action work.
Councillor Fittock and then Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Page 30, I'm just a little bit concerned about the wording of this and what it implies. Making best use of existing assets. Now, I understand what it's trying to say, but at the end, it's got optimise and minimise the need for new infrastructure. And I'm just wondering how that ends up being translated, because you can always sweat the asset and say, well, we've got a few parking spaces that are available here and there. But really, what we need to do as a district is to invest in the parking to create more spaces and more opportunity. And I'm just wondering how we're going to interpret that sentence in terms of the strategy moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Ms Green, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, members. So, as you'll be aware, within our car parks, we have quite a number of car park machines, and they aren't necessarily always as effective. So, when we come to looking at replacement of those car park machines, that's the sort of thing that we'll consider, looking at the newer technology, some of the newer facilities that enable you to record when you come in and you pay on exit, those kind of things that will be simpler for residents to use. So those are sort of things we'd look in terms of not necessarily needing to have all of the infrastructure that we have at the moment, but actually trying to minimise it, making it simpler for our residents and visitors.
You can quickly come back and then
because the word it almost infers that the argument that we if a proposal came forward and it was to invest in a different type of parking facility, that there'd be argument to say, well, we're not minimising the need for investment in infrastructure. Why change it? And that's the point I'm making. It almost implies that we shouldn't be doing things if we don't need to do things. And I'm just wondering if perhaps the wording can be more open. Yeah.
Councillor Siddle and then Councillor Durham.
So I just want to commend officers for the work that they've done. You know, this has got us in a much better position than we were before in terms of our car parks, and they are one of the most important assets in terms of the district. Yeah, there was the issue back in the springtime, but one of the things that we did, we responded to that really quickly. It was resolved within a week, and it didn't really cause too many issues. Yeah, one of the things that I think that we need to look at in terms of these assets and in terms of the financial position of the council, because we are in quite a strong financial position. Hopefully Mr. J will support me on that. Is to as we move forward this year and look at our fees and charges, that we try to be more measured in how we use these assets and how we take these assets forwards and the charges that we do. So I think there's now an opportunity for the council to be more balanced about these particular assets and particular fees. And the one thing that we will be doing is really looking at making these improve these, looking at EV charging, all those sorts of things. Will improve these assets both for residents and visitors. Maybe we'll put solar panels on over a car park or something.
Councillor Durham.
Oh, sorry, my mouse has gone for a walk. I just on the back of really what Councillor Fittock has said, minimise the need for new infrastructure. I mean, at the car parking working group, more than once we've discussed the potential to put a two-storey car park. We know, despite the charging, that our car parks are full nearly all of the time during the day. So, what I don't want to do is to, wipe out any future discussion about infrastructure improvements, such as two-storey, with, of course, solar panels.
I don't think it closes that, but point noted. Okay, I think we've probably explored this as much as we're going to, so I'll just remind you, the recommendation is that the car park strategy appendix 1 be approved. We've had a few comments about tweaks, so can I suggest that if we're minded to, we vote on approving it, subject to the, us picking up those few comments that people have made I don't think there's substantive changes that are being asked for. So if we're happy to do that, could we have a vote? Those in... Oh, yes. Thank you, Councillor Durham. So can we have a vote? Those in favour, please. And those against. I think that's it, unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we move on then to agenda item 8. This can be found on pages 47 to 72. This is a report on the animal welfare licensing policy. Miss Brownlee, I think. No?
Tracy Farrell.
Right, okay, thank you. I've obviously given a different name, so over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. You have before you an animal welfare licensing policy. The intention is to provide our stakeholders with clear guidance on the processes, and it sets out the steps and control for the relevant licensing authority. It takes into consideration the requirements of 4 specific pieces of legislation: the Animal Welfare Regs, the Animal Welfare Act, Dangerous Wild Animals Act and the Zoo Licensing Act. It's been written with regard to good practice and prioritises animal welfare, public safety, compliance with legal standards, and it shows what applicants can expect in terms of fees, inspections and enforcement. Just for clarity, because I know the Council does licence a wide range of different things, this particularly applies to the selling of animals as pets, providing boarding for cats and dogs, the hiring out of horses, breeding of dogs, and keeping and training animals in exhibitions. So the report is clearly laid out so that people can understand the safeguarding that's in place, the application process, how their premises will be rated and licensed, standards and condition, how we go about the process of granting, refusing and undertaking appeals, variations and suspensions, and also clear details of what the fees for all the different various processes are. It also has clear enforcement policy attached to it. So what we'd recommend is that members agree to adopt and publish the proposal of the animal licensing policy. And we're happy to take questions. And I only has come with us this evening. She's our lead animal welfare officer, so we can between us hopefully answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Durham, then Councillor Stilts, then Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I support that. I think it's very important. Hopefully, our council will behave slightly better than Uttlesford, who are now faced with a large bill for refusing a former page 3 model the ability to keep a certain animal. Sorry? I'm not mentioning names, Councillor Stamp, but then
drift off, please.
But yes, so I'm sure we'll take a much more sensible and pragmatic view, but yes, on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Councillor Still.
Thank you. I will ask the question. You've probably answered it, but this does also include animal rescue centres and people that are taking animals in that are now without a home, I take it.
The stray dogs isn't covered under this legislation. That's separate legislation.
Just a minute, sorry, Councillor. Would you want to come?
Yes, so animal rescue centres, they're not a licensable activity at the moment, which is why it's a bit of a grey area. There's currently a massive petition going forward. It's so far got like 50,000 signatures, so the government have got to respond, and if obviously it gets to 100,000, it'll go to Parliament with potentially a view to put it on the layer regs. So we're hoping as animal welfare officers that will come in. We've been pushing for it since these regs came in, but at the moment it doesn't cover animal rescues. We don't have any welfare grounds really to enter. It sits on a RSPCA thing.
Okay, Councillor Burrell-Cook, and then I'll let Councillor Durham come back. Councillor Burrell-Cook, could you put your mic on?
Sorry, thank you. Once again, thank you for a very comprehensive piece of work. I've got one question on page 60, application process, and 8.1. Now, in the legislation from the Animal Welfare Act, new applicants should receive a decision within 10 weeks or further information if more information is needed. However, that is not listed in 8.1 under new applications. Obviously in 8.7, if they're reapplying or it's coming up to expiry, it mentions the 10 weeks prior to the expiry date, but I wonder whether that element should be added to 8.1 just to make sure that there is a time defined limit on applications. Thank you.
Cheryl, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you. We can provide further detail. What we have accompanying this is a procedure paper which we work to as officers, but if you would like it included in the policy, that can be arranged.
Councillor Durham and then Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, I just really wanted to come back. I mean, this thing about rescue centres is really important. Some of the members may remember the AA dog rescue case. It obviously, and it ended up with a demonstration in our car park, again headed up by a former sitcom actress, but it gave us a very difficult time some time ago. So, and clearly it's an area that does need regulation, and hopefully the government are going to see fit, because it's certainly open to abuse. Yeah. Hello, yes. Doug is the sitcom I refer to.
I think the reality is that we can only operate within the regulations that exist,
it's a shame.
When it comes along, I'm sure that actually we will implement it, but we are where we are on that. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, forgive me, I haven't read the whole thing, and I admit that. But does this include dangerous dogs? When you walk the park, so we've got no comeback if you're walking down the road or jogging and a dog comes up and bites you, because there's a lot that happens in the Maldon district, especially when we've got beautiful country parks. How are we covered there? It's nothing to do with this then.
Thank you. We actually, it's quite timely. We've just on the 4th of June, a new animal officer started with us, and under her remit is dealing with such activities as stray dogs and vicious attacks by dogs. So that's all under her job. It's not under this licensing act, but it is covered in our team. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So, and it doesn't look like anybody else wants to speak. So we are. So I will just read out the recommendation that members agree to adopt and publish the proposed annual licensing policy as presented in Appendix A. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Thompson. So can we vote? Those in favour? Yeah. Thank you very much. Agreed. Okay, we will move on then to agenda item 10. Pages 79 to 120. This is the Promenade Park Management Plan. Ms Green, I think this is over to you again.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can introduce the report, then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Darren Spring, who's with me, who's been taking a very large part in developing this plan. So as members will be aware, the Council have been developing a management plan for Promenade Park over the last couple of years, and the plan has been heavily informed by the outcomes of a public consultation that was carried out in November 24 through to January 25. The management plan presented tonight includes an action plan of projects being delivered and also a number of proposed projects for which an investment plan has been developed and is before you tonight to consider. The investment plan deals with the short and the medium term projects, and the longer term projects are being brought forward as a separate report, which is at agenda item 11. The reason we're bringing it forward separately is the larger projects and the longer term projects are obviously larger in scale and complexity, and therefore there's a more detailed report on those particular projects. I'd like to hand over now to my colleague Darren Spring, who has been heavily involved in the development of the plan and who will take you through the report tonight.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Chair. The Council has developed a management plan for Promenade Park. It has taken feedback from the public and visitors, which sought to get a variety of views to strongly inform the final plan. Details of the public feedback have been summarised, and they're at pages 101 and 105 of Appendix 1 of the committee papers tonight. One of the aims of the management plan is to set out a vision of the park, outline how Promenade Park will be maintained and managed in the short term and the medium term, the next 2 to 5 years. The plan has been written as a working document to ensure that Promenade Park continues to be maintained and enhanced to meet the needs and expectations of the local community and visitors of the area. The scope and vision of the management plan has been overseen by the Strategic Assets Working Group and has been managed through the Council's project management process. Specifically, the management plan sets out where we are, providing a commentary on the current position, where we want to be, setting out a clear vision and objectives of the park, and how we get there, outlining a plan of action which will be informed through public consultation. The management plan sets out how we can achieve this through development of key projects, best practice, operational management, and a commercial focus. The Strategic Assets Working Group has proposed a recommendation to this committee to approve the Promenade Park Management Plan and has asked officers to bring forward an investment plan for the unfunded projects within the management plan to enable members to consider the funding. The investment plan is set out in Appendix 2 of the document, which is page 119. An annual review of the management plan will be taking place and will be informed by feedback from the public and stakeholders. Whilst public feedback can be submitted at any time, we will undertake 2 targeted public surveys each year, one in the summer months and one in the winter months. That ensures that we've got a wide range of views and they are captured. The outcome of the public survey will be used to inform and update the project management plan or the management plan and importantly inform any funding bids for projects and activities going forward. An annual report will be coming to this committee to report on the progress and the delivery of the management plan going forward. So the recommendations of the report are seeking approval and adoption of the Promenade Management Plan, which is in Appendix 1, to consider and approve investment plan set out in Appendix 2, and to note proposals, as Sue has said, to bring forward some of the longer term projects. Finally, I'd like to say a special thank you to Stephen Nunn for his consultation on the Promenade Park itself.
Thank you very much. So I'll just read out the recommendations, and there is just a slight correction within the recommendations as you have them. It's just numbers which have missed the odd naught. So recommendation little 1, that the Promenade Park Management Plan in Appendix 1 be approved. Little 2, that the projects and funding to deliver the projects from the Promenade Park Management Plan at Appendix 2 and summarised at paragraph 4.4 below be approved of, and that should say 144,000, one-off revenue, 8,500 ongoing revenue, and 1,136,000 capital. And little 3, that the longer term projects be noted with further detailed reports coming forward to this committee for consideration. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Siddle. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Durham.
Thank you. It's an excellent report and long overdue. I've just looked, well, I have looked through the projects. Now, members will recall we've had several discussions about the splash park predominantly, and the fact that we were unable to ascertain its profitability because it wasn't, its utilities, its water and its electricity were not metered individually. And I understand there was a plan that we would be metering each area so that we could establish the profitability, but I don't see that in the projects to be delivered, and I'm looking for...
Yes, indeed, though, is that not sitting within the leisure contract now, he says, looking...
No, metering would be the would be down to us to do
Well,
because it's our asset.
Mr. Butcher, could you maybe enlighten us?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the utilities will be the responsibility of Places Leisure going forward, and there's they've got some initiatives to actually make the splash park carbon neutral going forward. But utilities for the splash park are the responsibility of Places Leisure.
But Chairman, as I understand it from our previous discussions, we had no way of knowing what the splash park utility costs were because there's one bill for the whole of the Promenade Park. So how can Places for Leisure be responsible for the utilities if we don't know what those utilities are? Well,
Mr. Butcher, can you come back on that?
We do have consumption meters on the splash park pumps now, so we know what's being used, and then it would be like a sub-meter deduction.
Okay, so we have that. So the information that Councillor Durham is asking whether we've got is now there.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. Just on Appendix 2, page 119, and I was just looking at some of the costs, which obviously things cost, but it would seem to me we've got project manager costs in there, £41,000 and £81,000. And I'm just wondering if sometimes some of these costs can't be rolled up into other projects. I would struggle if I was given £122,000 to deliver that project. I probably wouldn't spend an awful lot of time on it because it doesn't seem to me that it warrants 18 months worth of labour to manage the project. So I'm just wondering if perhaps when we're looking at projects that person will probably end up being, I would imagine, utilised or something else, unless it's some kind of high paid consultant. It just seems to me a very high amount to pay to manage a relatively small number of not specifically complicated tasks. But thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Barrow-Cook?
Thank you. I'm just looking through the project numbers, and there still seems to be a lack of signage and information signage as part of a project within Promenade Park, because directional signage is one of our visitors' biggest concerns. And I know I raised this before at the previous meeting, that our visitors don't know what is outside and which direction to go to the Hythe, but also to the High Street and other areas of Maldon.
Screen, was it, I thought signage, or Mr. Spring, whether actually signage was an element of the plan for the park. Am I wrong on that?
Yes, you're right, Chair. There is some signage in there depicting on some of the areas that we're proposing. The whole signage element will need to be looked at as a whole because of the signage going into the town, as the councillor points out, and down to the Hythe Quay. So it is something that we were looking at, but it needs to be looked at as a whole rather than just individual.
All right. So it isn't sort of hidden within this project plan. Okay, Councillor Stamp.
Question. We've slipped in at the bottom a community engagement resource, so we've slipped in, is that another officer now, just to protect the assets when they've been done?
Thank you, members. So the additional community engagement resource is it covers a number of areas. So one is to support the investment that we're making in the prom in terms of protecting the assets. It's also to reflect the fact that we have seen, certainly over the last year or two, sort of more incidents of things like antisocial behaviour. We've had particular issues with the splash park where we've had antisocial behaviour. We're also bringing forward a report to council in a couple of weeks where we're looking to further invest in enforcing for things like dog control orders, so things like dog fouling, dogs off leads, etc. So this additional resource would help support the prom in its wider sense. The resource is predominantly for the prom park. However, if members were minded to approve the new the protection order for dog fouling, and dog control, that would also cover Burnham. So whilst it's predominantly for the Promenade Park, it would also support the public space protection orders that are currently in place within Burnham, and if members were to agree, the report would be further expanded.
Yes, okay, quick. Yeah,
To confirm,
okay.
so we're definitely going to have that, are we? It's not just going to go to the prom, because don't forget 90% of everything goes to the prom at this council. So we are going to get that coverage, because we do have dog fouling, we do have antisocial behaviour, just the same as Maldon does, and anywhere else. Actually, even on the Danger, you get antisocial behaviour. And just because the some of the other councils, the smaller parish councils, can't afford to pay the community protection officers' salaries or rates, it would be nice. I mean, because we do know when, sorry, I'm going on a little bit, but we do know when they're around, because things are better. But if you're not around, in the times when it's needed, Burnham's just as bad, and so is Southminster, as everywhere else as it is in Maldon. And I do find it sometimes, you know, especially what we've just debated earlier, and thankfully we've got it for £1, when we're discussing 1.4 million or whatever it is going to the prom, and we had difficulty getting a car park through for £1. So I do think we do need to be cautious here that the whole of the district is represented. Thank you.
Councillor, sorry? Oh, sorry. The screen, do you want to come back?
Yes, just to say, I think we mentioned this at a previous committee, Chairman, that we have recently recruited into a number of our vacant roles in our community engagement team, and we are now actively progressing the dog controls. So, for example, all of our staff have now been fully trained to be able to issue the fixed penalty notices, and we will be undertaking a range of campaigns, etc., on the back of the public space protection order, if members approve that.
And on the back of Councillor Stamp's comment, this would actually be wider than just the prom park.
So the dog control in terms of dog fouling would be right across the district, okay. But in terms of the public space protection order, very specifically around some of the areas that are proposed around sports pitches, etc., there will be additional patrols for those as well.
Okay, Councillor Siddle and then Councillor Spenceley.
So on that as well, I've had a conversation with Mrs. Green and one of her team about looking at the assets across the district and ensuring that we use again some of our reserves to look at, and in terms of LGR, and Councillor Donald probably won't like this, is that we try and bring it forward as quickly as possible in terms of those things. I'm going to sound really morbid now. But the new pathway, part of the new pathway was around not having the Promenade Park littered with memorial benches, which because people want a memorial bench and you can only have so many, as it were. And I know we sort of had a policy developed a couple of years around benches. Is there going to be a revenue from the stones, so that people will, to have a memorial to a loved one, will there be a charge for that to go on the pathway? And because at the moment there's no revenue on that, it's just a cost. So that's my question.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah. Yes, there will be. There is appreciate within the committee report, that's a summary of the information, but there is a business case that sits behind that, and there will be a revenue stream. It's I can't think what the figure is off the top of my head, but it's a few £1,000s per annum. Yeah.
And will there be a time limit on how long someone has a stone for?
That's to be agreed. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Councillor Spenceley.
Well, I don't want to go too far off topic again, because now we're going back to something else. But while we're talking about community engagement resource and other assets, I'm going to say something about Elm Farm Park very quickly. We do need to make sure that we do look after our other nearby assets in that case. Yeah. As currently we've got people fishing there, which they shouldn't be doing, and a lot of wild birds that are being injured, and it's not being patrolled at all. So I'm just going to make that point. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stilts, and then I'm going to wrap this up.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, now that we've done the Prom Park Management Plan and hopefully it's going to be approved, Are we now starting one for Riverside Park and our other places that we maintain?
Yeah, well, I think that might be a...
That is something that we're looking at as one of our next projects, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'll just remind you of the recommendation, little one, that the Promenade Park Management Plan Appendix 1 be approved, that the projects and funding to deliver the projects from the Prom Park Management Plan Appendix 2 and summarised at paragraph 4.4 below be approved of 144,000 one-off revenue and 8,500 ongoing revenue and 1,136,000 capital. And finally, little 3, that the longer term projects be noted with further detailed reports coming forward to this committee for consideration. I'll take those 3 together. So those in favour? Well, it sounds like we can go for agreed. Any dissensions or no? Okay. Thank you. That is carried. So on to agenda item 11. Which can be found on pages 121 to 132, Strategic Assets Working Group Business Cases. Mr. Butcher, I think this is over to you.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Driver. Yes, the report before you this evening is a business case that was developed with the support of the Strategic Assets Working Group. Now, the museum is within Prom Park, but it's not as, the scope and the design isn't as evolved as some of the other projects that you've seen already in the Prom Park Management Plan. So we work closely with the Strategic Assets Working Group to present the business case, and we feel that there's a good opportunity to progress this project in the Prom Park. The feedback that Sue's team completed as part of the Prom Park Management Plan engagement process stated that there was a gap in the park with no recognised seating area that's under cover and out of sort of wind and rain and shelter for food and drink. So we are keen to adopt a creative approach with the museum building, and we hope to achieve something that's a future sort of thriving museum space, showcasing the heritage and history of the Maldon district. And the opportunity we think is that could be aligned with a commercial entity that will sit within the building, and that will then in turn offset the council's maintenance liability and utilities and generate a revenue income stream for a longer period. We think the building will become a focal point of the park and supports tourism and future visitors to the district. But as I said at the beginning, the preferred model isn't fully developed yet, and this business case requests funding so that we can draw up a detailed project brief, and we can work on that with some of the key stakeholders, which we would like to continue working with the Strategic Assets Working Group and also representatives of the museum. The process would be supported by officers, and we would like to appoint a design team with the budget. They will consider a range of options for expansion and conversion of the building. And then we would like to refine these with the key stakeholders and get to a position whereby we could present these options back to committee ahead of any wider public engagement and consultation. So this is for the concept design for the development of the museum building. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the recommendation then is that the business case Promenade Park Museum and Visitor Centre attached at Appendix 1 is considered with 48,000 funding agreed to progress the project through a concept design and stakeholder concept design and stakeholder engagement stage. I so move. Do I have a second? Councillor Siddle, thank you very much. Questions? Councillor.
Could I actually ask how much money this council's envisaging spending on the prom, please?
Well, I guess we don't entirely know the answer to that at the moment, because actually part of the function of this is to get some idea as to what the options are, and then we will review them and make take a view on how much we want to spend.
Can I come back and say that we keep saying that, it is the Maldon district, not Maldon centric. And I understand it is a huge asset, and I totally agree with some of what is going on there. But I do think we need to actually think about producing some business cases other than just in the prom. I mean, I'm very grateful we've managed to get 18,000 for something going on the Riverside Park, because that's only taken, that was Mr Butcher's hard work and took a long time to do over a number of years. But 18,000 compared to what we're talking about millions going on the prom, I find it is a little bit, I won't say how I find it, but I'll be interested to follow the costs really, because I think they're extortionate.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Durham and then Councillor Burnham-on-Crouch. Oh, sorry, Burnham-on-Crouch, the other way. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask the officers in terms of the environmental impact assessment on the trees and surrounding area where this is due to be located, because some of those trees, although they have a new remembrance, they're not burden trees in terms of, but they were planted after World War I, horse chestnuts. There are other trees in the area that have significance to residents and also are many are very old, and how this is going to impact on that, and whether an environmental impact assessment has taken place already.
Mr Butcher, I don't know whether you want to respond to that.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. But no, an environmental impact assessment hasn't taken place yet. Should the project progress, then obviously that will be one of the key considerations when it comes to planning.
Yeah, because this is, you know, we're not being asked to go through to commit a sum to a final project. This is about a sum of money that will take us to a point where we could make a decision, and there will be a lot more work that would need to then be done. I think Councillor Durham, then Councillor Spenceley, then Councillor Siddle.
Well, Chairman, I just wanted to support this.
All right.
We've long discussed the museum, which is, you know, let's say quaint, but not fit for purpose. And it's about time that we had something, I mean, like some other people may remember it when it was above what was Prezzo's and whatever else, where you had to climb up that little staircase to look at the various bits and pieces. We deserve a better museum. And I would support that. And if a business case comes forward that justifies the capital expense, then that's a decision for a later date. But I do support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spenceley, Councillor Siddle, and then Councillor Fittock.
I would just like to ask Mr Butcher if you could talk a little bit more to the planned stakeholder engagement around this, because obviously, as you know, I feel that's very important.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Spenceley. Yeah, I think we're really keen, and I think it's become really clear to us working with the Strategic Assets Working Group. So the key stakeholders for the initial design phase will be the Strategic Assets Working Group, along with representatives of the museum, and like I say, officers will support that process. We've tried to present something which gives us around about 9 different designs, but that may flex a little bit. But we want to then work with the key stakeholders to refine that. What do we think works well? Once we have a refined proposal, I think and again we'll do that through the Strategic Assets Working Group. That will then come back to committee before we then agree on a wider public engagement and consultation. But I imagine something of this nature with the museum development, we would want to publicly consult on that development. Yeah.
Councillor Siddle?
No, fully support it. By the time we did it, you know, the problem's crying out for it. I understand Councillor Stamp's point of view. It goes back to what I said earlier, that you know, not only do we need to look at the assets in Maldon, but we need to look at the assets across the district, and that is a priority for me as leader, and I think as the council. We need to ensure that, you know, we're investing everywhere and making sure that, you know, that we are leaving a legacy while we can.
I'll come to Councillor Fittock in a minute. Councillor Durham, you wanted to just come back?
Yeah, I'm just mindful, Chairman, we already have 3 successful museums in the district. We have Stonemeyer's Great War Aerodrome, Combined Services Museum and Museum of Power. It would be really nice, I know it's perhaps jumping the gun, but if there was greater collaboration between those museums, and I know that's another thorny issue, but where perhaps they're sharing exhibits. I mean, there's a golden opportunity out there, and I would sincerely hope that that's taken into account. Good luck with Stonemeyer's.
Yeah, Councillor Fittock, and then back to Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Jay. It's just a general observation, really, and it's relating to, I mean, just for officers to check, there is new legislation, there's a new paragraph inserted in the NPPF, and it basically says local authorities should refuse planning applications for hot food takeaways and food outlets where within walking distance of schools and where places where children and young people congregate, unless location is within the designated town centre. I just wanted to make sure that we check with planning that we aren't going to have any complications with the definition of what we're providing. So what's a fast food outlet? I don't know, but it'll probably become more relevant should somebody else want to do the same and we want to refuse it because of this paragraph. But it's a new paragraph in the 2024 MPPF.
Councillor, do you want Mr. just promoted you or
Yeah.
promoted you, whichever way round it is, Mr. Butcher.
Thanks, Councillor Driver. Yes, Councillor, we've had informal discussions with colleagues in planning, and there's no, obviously it's subject to a more detailed design and plan, but they haven't flagged any immediate concerns to us.
Okay. I just want to make sure they know that is a new paragraph in the MPPF. That's all.
Yeah, we'll feed that back. Yeah.
I want to remind Councillor Durham we have a museum in Burnham. Have you ever been? It's near the sailing club on the quay. There's an old museum there. We do lots of things with kiddies.
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
There we go.
It wasn't there.
Okay, I think we've probably explored this as enough, so I will just remind you of the recommendation that the business case Promenade Park Museum and Visitor Centre attached Appendix 1 is considered with a £48,000 funding agreement to progress the project through a concept design and stakeholder engagement stage. Can we have those in favour? Agreed. Okay. Anybody against? Abstention? One abstention. Okay, thank you very much. So we move on then to agenda item 12, Provisional Finance Outturn 24-25. That can be found on pages 133 to 148. Mr. J, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So agenda item 12, the provisional outturn report, just to clarify, as it says in the body of the report, it is provisional because the auditors have not yet concluded their work. So the external auditors, as they go through their process following the preparation of the accounts, the accounts for the year which have now been done, there will be, as normal, an audit process. There could be a change arising from that. I doubt quite considerably whether or not there will be any impact on this report, but if there was to be an impact, I would obviously bring the report back with any necessary updates. So just to take you through the report briefly, section 1 sets out in outline the position around the general fund and the areas covered within the report, and in section 2 it sets out the recommendations with references to the various detailed appendices which set out the background to the figures which are also set out in the report. The key element is to flag, to report back that the overall position is reported as an 853,000 underspend against the budget, which is also detailed further on through the report. So I'll just take you through the key issues. So this is the result, obviously, for the year to the end of March 2025. It's based on the performance against the original budget as agreed, but as amended subsequently through this committee, and the detail of the budget movement is set out, paragraph 331, table 1, and the net service budget we were working with was 12.9 million, as you should be able to see in that table. The outturn is set out from 3.4.1, and it's at table 2, and what you can see there is against the net cost of services. There was a slight underspend, the 220 in brackets that you can see in that table 2, the top line. There was also better than anticipated receipts through on investment income, largely due to the degree of volatility in interest rates and bank rates that we saw through the later part of the year. There's then various contributions through transfers from reserves, etc., and that gives us the overall position as set out in table 2, 853,000 better than the budgeted position. The details on that and an analysis by different service areas with basic commentary around what the drivers were in the different areas is set out in Appendix 1. In Appendix 2, as it says at 3.4.5, there are various amounts requested to be carried through into the new financial year. This is because areas were committed for expenditure at during the 24-25 year, but the expenditure didn't actually come through in 24-25. It is going to come through in 25-26, and therefore the permission is requested in order to carry that through. That's a usual financial process from my perspective, but it's also consistent with the procedures of the council. What you can see at 3.4.6 and table 3 is the overall impact of that on the general fund balance, and you can see there that the general fund balance started the year at 7.26 million and closes the year at 8.636 million. So there's an increase there during the year. That means that the overall position on the general fund remains above the recommended minimum. Earmark reserves are similarly robust, if I can put it that way, and that's set out in more detail at 4.1. Section 5 covers the detail also covered in Appendix 4 in a lot more detail, but it summarises it and identifies the performance in capital investment. Of this, we saw 6.9 million of capital investment during the course of the 24-25 year, and there was an underspend of 1.2 million, of which 1.1 million is requested to be carried forward. Effectively, the schemes continue, but the profile of delivery has changed. So from my perspective, I would describe it as slippage between the financial years. It is important to be clear on that, but it doesn't change the previous agreements and the capital schemes that councillors have approved. Section 6 obviously just goes through the corporate plan. Implications are also set out in 7. Just to go back to the key points in the recommendations, it's worth noting, which is at 2(1)(b), the 853k surplus is then split, and it's proposed to be split as 500,000 to be put into a reserve against local government reorganisation. To be clear, this is not against known costs, but we are understanding that there are various costs coming through relating to reorganisation. Some of this, it's important to identify, this is not against, if you like, greater Essex cost. It's also about ensuring the readiness of this authority to move forward towards that. So, for example, working to prepare staff in an appropriate manner so that they are able to be ready for those changes as and when they arise, and perhaps other changes internally as well. Similarly, transformation reserve for the balance of 353k to support ongoing improvements in the ways in which the organisation is able to work and to deliver services to residents. That's my summary of that paper, and happy to take any questions from councillors. Chair, I'll pass back to you.
Okay, I'll just run through the recommendations then. 1, Councillor Siddle.
I'd like to amend one of the recommendations if at all possible. I know, but that's well, you know, just.
Well, let me read them out.
Okay.
All right, I'll read them out and then I'll take your suggestion. Yes, to be, yes, I had noticed that. That was one of the changes, but I will note, yes, when I read this through. So, recommendation, little one then, that A, the provisional outturn position for the 24-25 revenue budget as detailed in Appendix 1 be noted, along with reasons for significant variances. B, the 853k surplus be transferred to local government reorganisation. That's LGR 500k and transformation 353k reserves. Little c, the Chief Exec be granted delegated authority in consultation with the Chair of this committee to apply funds from the reserves detailed in B above, with any such decisions that being openly communicated to the Strategy and Resources Committee through routine reporting at the earliest opportunity. Little 2, that the revenue commitments detailed in Appendix 2 be approved to be brought forward into 25-26. Little 3, that the movements in earmark reserves in Appendix 3 be approved. Little 4, that the provisional outturn position for the 24-25 capital budget in Appendix 4 be noted and the proposed capital commitments be approved to be brought forward into 25-26. And finally, little 5, that the request for 25-26 capital and revenue budgets be updated with proposed amendments in Appendix 5 to be funded via various sources of funds. Councillor Siddle.
Yes, so I would like to amend recommendation 1C, that it also includes the leader of the council, especially as I'm at the LGR meetings.
Well, can we approve that by us? Well, let's have a vote. Yeah. Are we all agreed on that? Include. Oh, by all means, before we.
Because I totally understand, and I don't disagree with you being on it, so don't get me wrong. But I mean, surely this has to go through the finance. We've got a finance working group, and we've also got an LGR working group. So if this authority is just going to spend money without it being discussed anywhere else, I really do support LGR, don't get me wrong, but I think we need to look at the value for money and what we need to do and what we're spending it on. And I think members need to be kept informed. That's why we were having the LGR working group, and that's why we did the financial peer challenge. So, you know, a 5-minute meeting, and we meet once a month, don't we, finance group or something? I just think it shouldn't just be 3 people or 2 people making those decisions. But I don't mind you going on it, Richard.
Can I take some views? Anybody have a particular? Well, yes, you've already expressed your view. Oh, all right, come on.
No, so I think that makes perfect sense. You know, none of these decisions are made quickly, and what we need to do is ensure that we keep at least group leaders informed of these decisions, and that can be done through the LGR working group, through group leaders meetings. So I think it's really important that as these things come forward, that we keep members informed, and if that means we have an impromptu meeting to say, okay, we've just decided this, and what's your view? There's no reason why we can't do a quick Teams meeting.
Can I just get a view from Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Jay? Mr. Wilkinson, do you want to say? Respond to that first?
Thank you, Chair. I think, I mean, I don't disagree with members' comments. I think we just have to be clear about where the authority and approval is, and what are we doing at each of these groups? Are we keeping members informed, or are we asking for approval? And that's really almost me asking that question. I'm happy to follow whatever the rules are. I think what we just need to do is make sure that we've allocated a resource to be able to respond in a timely way. Now, that timely way could be having an impromptu working group. I think the keeping members informed should be a given. I don't think anybody is suggesting not keeping members informed in whichever forum that is. I think it's just very much allocating a resource, delegating it to a senior officer. I think the members' involvement should happen, regardless.
Mr. Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just to support what Mr. Wilkinson was just saying, but also to echo those points, the drafting of the recommendation, to be clear, is effectively referring through to the formal decision-making process through which all of these decisions would need to go anyway. It was never the intention of the recommendation as drafted to suggest that the Finance Working Group would somehow be bypassed through that. I don't believe that those particular meetings are currently in the diary, but that needs to happen, and that would provide an opportunity for a regular update. I think the most important point around all of this is that nothing is happening particularly quickly on this front. So I believe there will be ample opportunity to be keeping a running total and to inform the working group, thereby keeping members cited on it, but also to enable a situation in which matters could be discussed, and as and when a decision needed to be taken, it provides the agility through that. But I'm happy to be steered by members on the best way to achieve that. Okay, Councillor Stamp.
Can I just say my main concern is, and I've said this before, so I'm not coming out of anything out of the blue here. If things change and we've committed, or somebody's going to commit to an expenditure that is not going to be able to be delivered, I think, for the right reasons, I'm not saying officers or councillors are going to deliberately try and do anything, but I just think that we need to be informed. And I will give an example. Say, for example, we keep going down the 5 route because in principle it was agreed. At some stage, if that ever changes, the money has to then be redirected, because we've not approved a budget except for tonight for LGR. It's the first time I've seen it. Nobody's turned around and said to me in whichever committee or working group I've sat on that we need this money. Obviously, I know we do, because I sit on another working group at county. I understand that. But I do think we need to be more open and transparent about these costs. And, I mean, Benjay is going to these meetings now, and I do think we need the resources here. But I think we need to be open to members and say, yes, we've got to look at this, we've got to look at that. This is how much it's going to cost, because officers can't just do their day jobs and then be expected to come off and do stuff for the LGR. But I do think we need to be actually told that, because it's sometimes not everybody would understand the process of LGR and devolution and the amount of hard work and stresses it's going to put on all the officers in this council. So I'm not saying it to be difficult, I'm saying that I just want it all out there and that people get to know it.
Mr. Wilkinson, I think the point you were making, tell me if I'm wrong, is that actually this is about where the lines of authority in terms of delegated authority and spending. And now that's a different. It relates, but that's sort of, you can have that separately, making sure that you've got members being clearly informed through, whatever route we decide. Finance working group might be an obvious one, to keep them informed of what's happening, though actually the decision is not being made in the financial working group, but they need to be informed about what's happening. I think if that's a vehicle that would satisfy you, Councillor Stamp, and you're comfortable with that. Councillor Durham.
Yeah, I understand where Councillor Stamp is coming from, but Mr. Wilkinson makes a very valid point. This is about authority to spend that money. And the leader mentioned the fact that things aren't going to move very quickly. They may well do very quickly, because things are moving extremely quickly, rest assured, and there may be a necessity to spend or to commit that money quickly, and to go through Finance Working Group, SNR to full council just won't work. So we have to be able to give the delegated authority to yourself and the leader and the chief executive to actually commit that money, and they would then report back on how it's been spent and what the result is. But I just don't think we have the luxury of the time to go through the whole process.
But it will be important that we keep
communication is key, but this is about authority to spend that money.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, any other questions? Quite a bit in there. Councillor Fittock.
It's just generally, really, I mean, obviously it's very difficult to get these numbers correct, but each year we do seem to be considerably away from what our original numbers were, which obviously is concerning, because it will seem that we're planning to do things that we don't do, which being the cost that potentially we're charging residents for things that we think we've got to fund that we don't actually end up having to fund them for. So I know the peer review said that we should focus more on zero cost budgeting. So I just like to ask Mr. J to focus on that, because it does seem that we don't have quite as tight control over our forecasting of costs as we might have at times. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. J.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's a very good point. And looking at the percentage variance against the next budget, the net budget, sorry, if that percentage variance was an overspend rather than underspend, some of the responses I think would be quite different. I think it's incumbent on me to be working with the finance team and to be working with the budget holders right across the council to understand the reasons for the 24-25 performance being as it is. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just that we need to understand it and then to take any appropriate learning and to apply that into any changes which might be required for the 25-26, the current year budget and associated capital expenditure, of course. So, yeah, Chair, what I would like to do, if possible, would be to bring back something to this committee in due course with any changes that are necessary to be made to the current year budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Just a question on customer services and operations. I note with interest that it was an underspend because the income for the car park had been 150k higher than what was anticipated. Now, I know that people think I'm crackers sometimes, but I have actually proposed that we do more free car parking, especially for shoppers in Maldon at certain times throughout the year. And I know you're going to say, well, you know, it's a bonus, we've got that money. I think, you know, we've saved all that money. Why can't we have something like that instead of, I know we do it at Christmas to enhance the high street, but I think when you've got something as a large underspend as that, or we get more money in, so it is an underspend, I think we should think about doing something back, a special promotion to say thank you for supporting us for this year. We're going to have 3 or 4 shopping days, whenever it is, free car parking. So that's one. And the second one, can I have some more information on Appendix 2? It says feasibility study delayed due to complications relating to planning application will be required once planning issue resolved. And that is for service delivery of cemeteries. Feasibility study, 48,600. I can't remember what that is for. Can anybody help me? I need...
Oh, yes, Mr. J.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to respond on the first point around car parks, and I don't know if the colleagues in the room may be better placed than I to respond on the cemeteries point. But in terms of the car parks, I think it's important to bear in mind that in a way the revenue from car parking is best referred to as residual surplus to the process of managing traffic. We've got to be a little bit careful around exactly how car parking income is treated. I think that those kinds of considerations are some of the considerations that I'd want to apply. And as I said to the previous question, in understanding the position for 25-26 and therefore how some of the position from 24-25 can be applied appropriately to any changes that we could make within 25-26. It's to do with some of the operational issues, plus taking account of some of the technical restrictions that could apply around car parking revenue.
Thank you for that response. It was very high level to me, but to me, if we can do it, we should be able to do it basically. But the cemeteries, I don't know who's going to help me.
Ms. Green, can you respond? Is that?
Thank you, members. So this was a study that was going to be undertaken about 18 months, 2 years ago. As members will be aware, we are reaching the point where we have got reduced capacity excuse me, in some of our cemeteries, and we were looking to acquire some additional land to extend the current cemetery. There was a planning application that was associated with the land that we were looking at, therefore we have paused that piece of work, but we will be still looking to need to acquire some additional land at some point, because we have, certainly within at least one of our cemeteries, a reducing level of capacity.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, so I will. Just lost my place. So we've got a series of. Let me just try and find my place. So we have a number of recommendations, and if we're happy, we'll take them in one. So recommendation 1, I'll read this out again. 1, that A, the provisional outturn position for the 2024-25 revenue budget as detailed at Appendix 1 be noted, along with reasons for significant variances. B, the 853,000 surplus be transferred to local government reorganisation 500k and transformation 350k reserves. C, the chief exec be granted delegated authority in consultation with the chair of this committee and the leader It is, okay, it is a change to the recommendation. Well, I'll read out what we've got here, and then if you want to make a suggestion that we change that recommendation, then we'll vote on that change. So the chair of the committee to apply funds from the reserves detailed in B above, with any such decisions then being openly communicated to the Strategy and Resources Committee through routine reporting at the earliest opportunity. Little 2, that the reserve commitments detailed in Appendix 2 be approved to be brought forward into 25-26. Little 3, that the movements in earmarked reserves in Appendix 3 be approved. Little 4, that the provision outturn position for 24-25 capital budget in Appendix 4 be noted, and the proposed capital commitments be approved to be brought forward into 25-26. And little 5, that the request for 25-26 capital and revenue budgets be updated with proposed amendments in Appendix 5 to be funded via various sources of fund. There is a suggestion. Councillor Siddle, do you want to make a proposal? It's little 1C.
That we add, and I thought Councillor Dorrit seconded it. I did.
Yeah.
So I think it already has been seconded by Councillor Dorrit.
Well, but all right, but then in that case, then we may need to vote on that. So are we agreed to add the leader? Agreed, right. So I'm not going to read it. So with that addition to little 1C, to include the leader, can we vote on that? Those in favour, agreed? Great, thank you. Okay, we move on then. So we've got to that point where actually agenda item 13, any other items of business that the chair decides are urgent. I have very varied and numerous ones, but I'll put them to one side, so no is the answer. I don't. So under agenda item 14, then exclusion of public and press, that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act, and that this satisfies the public interest test. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Can we agree by sense? Thank you very much. So,